Listen carefully, because what I am about to tell you is not a ghost story. Ghosts leave. This thing never does. Daniel Cole moved into a new apartment, and someone was already living inside the walls. Not dead, not gone, alive, watching him breathe, listening to him sleep, waiting for the perfect moment to make sure he never left again. And the worst part is, the building is still there, still quiet, still waiting, and it already knows who it wants next. Before we go any deeper, take a second to like this video and subscribe. It keeps the channel alive. And trust me, you do not want to miss what happens next. Now, stay very still and listen. The story is only getting darker. Daniel Cole moved into the apartment because he believed it was empty. He believed it was quiet. He believed it was finally a place where he could rest. He was wrong from the first second he stepped inside, but he did not understand it yet. The building already knew him. The walls already knew his name. Something inside the walls had already decided he belonged here. The apartment sat on the 4th floor of an aging complex in a city that pretended it was alive, while everything inside it was quietly decaying. The hallways smelled faintly of bleach and something metallic. The lights flickered sometimes, but never enough for anyone to call it a problem. The neighbors stayed inside their homes, doors always locked, voices always quiet, as if they knew speaking too loudly might invite something closer. Daniel thought it was simply an old building. He had no idea that the silence here was not normal silence. It was listening silence. He placed his boxes on the wooden floor. The air felt stale, thick, like it had not been opened or breathed in for far too long. But that was not true. This apartment had been occupied, constantly, just not in the way Daniel imagined. He looked around the living room. Plain white walls, a single window, a long stretch of wall that formed the hallway. There was nothing unusual to him. No strange symbols, no obvious signs of danger, nothing to justify the cold feeling crawling up his back. So he laughed at himself quietly, forced his shoulders to relax, and continued moving in. He did not know that the wall behind him shifted slightly when he turned away. Not the paint, not the plaster, the space inside. He would learn slowly. Daniel was a quiet man, a careful man, the type of person who avoided trouble naturally. He lived alone, no family nearby, no close friends who checked on him regularly. He believed that meant peace. But in places like this, isolation is not peace. It is opportunity. He dropped his final box in the bedroom. The light bulb flickered once, not because it was weak, but because something brushed against the wires behind the ceiling. Something that should not have been there. Something that had never stopped moving. He turned off the light and stepped back into the hallway. That is when the apartment breathed for the first time. It was soft, barely there. A sound so small, so buried, that any normal person would dismiss it. A low, slow exhale from inside the wall beside him. Not wind, not pipes. Something alive. Something that understood how to be quiet. Daniel froze. He listened. Silence. He forced a smile again. Old building, he told himself. Pipes expand. Wood settles. Houses make noise. Everyone says that. Everyone believes that. It is comforting to assume a house is still harmless, even when it is not. He walked to the kitchen. The wall followed him, not with footsteps, with presence. He felt watched, not the way you feel when someone looks through a window. This was closer, personal, parasitic, the kind of attention you feel when something is inches away from you, but hidden. Something pressed against the other side of a thin barrier, listening to every sound you make, every breath, every movement. It had been alone for a long time. Now it was curious. Daniel turned the tap on. Water ran. The sound filled the room for a moment. Under the sound of the water, something tapped once. Inside the wall behind the sink. A knuckle. A bone. A deliberate touch. He looked up slowly. The tapping did not repeat. The apartment went still again. Too still. He leaned closer to the wall without realizing he was doing it. Humans always do that. Curiosity is stronger than fear in the beginning. Fear takes control later. He placed his hand gently against the cold surface. Nothing moved. He withdrew his hand. That disappointed it. The wall made another sound. Not a tap this time. A soft slide. As if skin brushed rough concrete. As if a body shifted slightly to make room. It was the first time Daniel pulled away quickly. But he still did not understand. He assumed he was tired. He assumed he needed sleep. He assumed things would feel normal in the morning. He did not know there would be no normal mornings here. Night arrived faster than he expected. The city outside went quiet in that strange way only certain neighborhoods do. The kind of quiet that feels intentional. The kind that feels like everything stopped for a reason. Daniel lay on his bed, staring at the ceiling, unaware of how close he was to another living thing. The wall beside his bed looked harmless, blank, motionless, painted over many times. But inside, inches from his head, something shifted position so it could hear him better. He turned onto his side. It turned too. He closed his eyes. It watched him. The air felt heavier, thicker, colder. Daniel pulled his blanket tighter, blaming the weather, blaming nerves, blaming anything that was not the truth. His breathing slowed as he drifted toward sleep. The wall matched his breathing pace. In, out, not perfectly, slightly delayed, slightly wrong, like a child copying an adult's breathing pattern for fun. Then, when Daniel was just about to sleep, just when his body relaxed enough to lose awareness, it happened. The wall exhaled again. Longer this time. Harder, directly beside his ear. Daniel's eyes snapped open. He did not move. He did not even breathe for a moment. Instinct told him something was too close. Instinct told him something was wrong. He listened. Silence. A silence so thick it almost felt like someone pressing a hand over the apartment's mouth. He swallowed slowly. He wanted to turn on the light, but he did not. Because turning on the light means admitting you are afraid. Admitting fear means accepting something is real. Humans avoid that as long as they can. So Daniel stayed still, in the dark, pretending everything was fine. The wall smiled inside. It liked him already, and from that moment, Daniel Cole was no longer living alone. He swallowed. The bedroom light flickered softly. Only once. Enough to remind him he was not controlling the room. He looked at the wall again. Longer this time, as if he expected it to open. As if something would step through if he stared too much. The apartment stayed calm. It had time. He placed his hand on the wall, just to prove to himself he was ridiculous. The plaster felt cold, much colder than the room. His palm sat there for a second, and then the wall breathed back. A slow, deep exhale behind his hand. He snatched his hand away. Silence again. He stood there for a long moment, pretending he was not afraid. Pretending he still owned this place. But the truth was simple. He had moved into a new apartment, and someone was already here, hidden inside the walls, watching him, learning him, waiting to see what kind of fear he could give them. Morning arrived, but it did not bring comfort. It never does in places like this. Sunlight entered the apartment, but it stopped at the walls, as if something inside rejected it. The light was weak here, thin, as if it had to travel through something unseen before it reached Daniel. He woke with tired eyes and a heavy head. He told himself he slept. He did not. His body rested, but his mind stayed alert the entire night, listening without meaning to. Listening to the quiet that was not quiet, to the silence that held breath inside it. Daniel sat up and looked at the wall. He stared longer than he admitted to himself. He expected nothing, but he watched anyway. Humans always do that. When something feels wrong, they pretend they are checking for reassurance, but deep down, they are checking for confirmation. The wall did not move. Of course it did not. It only moves when it wants to. He stood, dressed slowly, and walked to the living room. Something should have comforted him here. The open space, the normal furniture, the ordinary environment. Normal things are supposed to bring safety. But here, normal was strange. Normal felt fake, like a stage set built to calm the audience while something important happened behind it. He walked into the kitchen, and then he stopped. The chair. He remembered its position. He remembered it clearly. He left it pushed under the table the night before. Now it faced the opposite direction. Moved, turned, as if someone sat there, as if someone watched him sleep from the kitchen. Daniel stared. He stayed very still, not because he wanted to, but because his body refused to do anything else. His heart beat faster, but he tried to control his breathing. He told himself he just forgot. That memory is unreliable. That stress makes people misremember things. He lied to himself. People do that very well. He reached out and slowly pushed the chair back into place. The wall above the kitchen shifted quietly. Not loud, not obvious. Just enough. Daniel did not hear it, but something inside the walls noticed him touching the chair. It watched his reaction. It learned. He made coffee to steady his hands. He needed noise. He needed something simple, repetitive, normal. Noise feels safe because it covers silence. Silence makes you listen. Silence lets you hear what you should not. While the kettle heated, Daniel glanced toward the hallway. He froze again. The hallway light was turned on. He never turned it on. He remembered every switch he touched. He remembered every room he entered. That light was off. Now it was on. Only one thing could have done that. Something that knows where the switches are. Something that knows the shape of this place. Something that has walked this hallway many times before him. Daniel moved slowly toward it. His steps were careful, soft, as if he did not want to disturb something he already disturbed. The light hummed quietly. Warm glow. Normal. Too normal. He stood beneath it. He looked at the switch on the wall. On. He stared at it the way people stare at a wound, already knowing they are hurt, but hoping somehow they are not. He turned it off. The hallway went dark. He stood there a second longer. The wall beside the hallway warmed slightly from body heat inside it. Not his. Something was standing there, listening, breathing, close enough to touch him if the barrier vanished. Daniel stepped away. Now the apartment owned his attention completely. What could go wrong here? Everything. He could lose sleep, then sanity, then judgment, then safety, then control, then himself. Fear destroys in stages. It never takes everything at once. It removes it piece by piece until the victim cannot fight back. And Daniel was already losing the first piece. He picked up his phone. No network signal. He walked to the window. Still nothing. No internet. No calls. No easy help. No instant communication. The building blocked signals in strange ways. Numbers worked here, but only from outside. Not from him. Not for him. He did not notice that yet. He would. The day continued, but nothing truly felt like a day. Every sound he made echoed differently, as if the apartment listened and remembered. When he walked, something behind the walls adjusted weight softly, matching him. When he paused, it paused. When he breathed slower, it breathed slower. This was not random noise. This was attention. He sat on the couch and tried to relax. The couch felt wrong too. Not physically, emotionally. As if someone else had sat there for a very long time, waiting. He looked toward the wall again. There is a moment in every horror where the victim stops ignoring the feeling and starts acknowledging it. That moment came now. Daniel whispered without intending to speak. "Is someone there?" The apartment stayed silent. But silence was not an answer. Silence was response. Silence meant listening. Silence meant patience. The presence inside the walls understood something important in that moment. Daniel was aware now. Awareness makes fear real. Awareness makes pain stronger. Awareness feeds it. The building had chosen him because of who he was. Quiet, alone, predictable. No one checked in daily. No one visited often. No one would question slow changes in his behavior. He was perfect. The apartment had history. People stayed short periods. People left quickly. Some left their belongings behind. Some left suddenly. Some did not leave at all. The management called it unfortunate events and bad luck. They never told full stories. They never told Daniel anything meaningful. They just smiled when he signed the lease and looked relieved. He should have asked why. He did not. He was just happy to have a place. He walked back to the bedroom. He stopped halfway. He heard it again, not breathing this time. Movement. Inside the wall, right beside him, slow, deliberate. Like someone shifting their weight in a narrow space, like someone turning their head to listen better. Not frantic, not animal, human-paced, calm. Daniel stepped back. It stayed with him. He stepped forward. It matched. He stood still. It waited. The threat was not noise. The threat was intelligence. Whatever lived inside the walls understood timing. It understood silence. It understood patience. It understood humans. And it was studying Daniel carefully. A question now sat in Daniel's mind, even if he refused to say it out loud. Who is in here with me? Another question followed. How long have they been here? Then a third. Why have they not left? That third question mattered the most, because the answer was simple. It had nothing else, and now it had him. Unease wrapped around Daniel like something physical. He did not run. He did not scream. People rarely do at this stage. Instead, they pretend to cope. They pretend to adjust. They pretend it is fine. Fear is quieter in the beginning. Loud fear comes later. Daniel took a deep breath. He tried to continue his day. He tried to pretend. The presence behind the walls did not pretend. It simply waited. Waited because it knew something Daniel did not accept yet. This apartment was never meant to be shared. It was meant to be claimed. Time began to behave strangely inside the apartment. Hours did not feel like hours. Minutes stretched, bent, and tightened in strange ways. Daniel moved through the day, but the day did not move with him. It held him in place, like the apartment did not want him to forget where he was. He tried to distract himself. It did not work. He cleaned the kitchen to keep his mind busy. He wiped the counters. He washed the single plate he used. He placed it on the rack to dry. He turned his back for 2 seconds. 2 seconds. He turned around again. The plate was gone. Not broken. Not fallen. Gone. Daniel stopped breathing for a moment. His eyes scanned the sink, the rack, the counter, the floor. Nothing. He opened the cabinet slowly. The plate sat inside. Clean. Dry. Perfectly placed. Exactly like someone who lives here would store it. He closed the cabinet carefully. He sat on the couch because sitting felt like a decision. Standing meant listening. Standing meant waiting. Sitting meant pretending nothing was wrong. The silence returned. Deep. Watching. Alive. He leaned back and looked toward the wall beside the hallway. He noticed it. A hairline crack, thin, almost invisible, running across the paint in a slow curve. He leaned closer, not because he wanted to. Curiosity moved him. The crack was new, fresh. The apartment shifted slightly inside. Something behind the wall pressed against it earlier. Hard enough to stress the plaster. Hard enough to leave a trace. Hard enough to prove it had weight, mass, shape. He stepped back quickly. Night approached again. He did not want night. Night meant quiet. Quiet meant hearing. He turned on the television for noise. Any channel, any voice, any distraction. He did not care what it played. He needed sound so the silence would stop breathing around him. The television came on. Random channel. A news anchor spoke. For a moment, he relaxed. Then the sound changed. Static cut in. White noise. Then silence. The television stayed on. The screen stayed lit. but there was no voice, no music, only the faint hiss of empty audio. Then something else came through. Breathing. Not recorded breathing. Not background noise. Breathing in the room. Breathing inside the walls. And it was louder through the television speakers, as if something pressed its face against wiring somewhere behind the walls and exhaled softly into the system. Daniel stood up slowly and turned the television off. The apartment grew quiet again. Too quiet. He checked the front door. He needed to know he could leave. His hand touched the lock. It was turned, unlocked. He remembered locking it the night before. He remembered the sound of the bolt sliding in. He remembered the certainty. Now it was open. His chest tightened. He locked it again. He stepped away. Minutes passed. He checked it again. Unlocked. Something inside the walls smiled. It wanted him to understand something very simple. He was not keeping anything out. He was not locking anything in. He was reminding something that it could open doors whenever it wanted. He tried to call someone again. Still no signal. No calls out. He held the phone in his hand and stared at it like it could save him. The screen flickered once. Just once. Not a glitch. A message appeared. A simple notification. Draft saved. He did not type anything. He opened his drafts slowly. There was text inside. A short sentence. Written slowly. Written recently. Written by someone who should not have access to his device. I am still here. The walls stayed silent. He turned the phone off and placed it down. He did not pick it back up. He went to the bathroom. He turned the faucet on. Water ran. Normal. He splashed his face to wake himself from whatever this was becoming. The mirror fogged slightly from the warmth. He looked up. He stared at his reflection. Then his eyes shifted to the background in the mirror, the bathroom wall behind him. For a moment, the paint bulged, just a little, like something inside leaned forward against it. Then it flattened again, like nothing happened. He could not sit still anymore. He walked into the bedroom because the bedroom felt like his. He wanted one room to belong to him, one space to feel safe. He checked his belongings. Nothing missing. But nothing felt untouched either. He opened his wardrobe. His clothes seemed slightly disturbed. Not enough to prove anything, just enough to feel wrong. Like someone touched them. Like someone pressed their face against the fabric. Like someone smelled them. His stomach tightened. He sat on the bed. He closed his eyes for a moment. He listened. He should not have listened. When humans focus, they hear more. And he did. He heard faint scratching inside the wall behind his head. Not wild scratching, not animal frantic scratching. Measured, gentle, like fingertips. Tracing patterns, not trying to get out. Exploring, mapping, learning him. Then it stopped. Time stretched. The air thickened. The apartment grew colder. He wrapped his arms around himself and whispered, "Please stop." He did not say it loudly. He did not say it bravely. He said it the way broken people speak. The apartment listened. Silence returned. Not because it cared, but because it understood power. Fear grows better in quiet. Hours passed. He did not remember how many. He stared at the wall so long that his eyes hurt. He waited for something to happen. Waiting is worse than terror. Waiting eats the mind slowly. Then finally, something changed. A sound. Right above him. Inside the ceiling. Slow, careful crawling. Something moving. Not like a rat. Not like an animal. Much heavier. Much slower. Intentional. It traveled across the ceiling directly above wherever he moved. If he stepped into the living room, it followed. If he walked toward the kitchen, it followed. If he went back to the bedroom, it followed. Always above. Always near. Always aware. The truth was obvious now. Whatever lived inside the walls was not guessing where he was. It knew. It tracked him. With precision. He stopped in the center of the living room. He stood perfectly still. He wanted to test something. If he stood still, would it? The sound above him stopped. Silence. He took one slow step to the left. The ceiling creaked gently. It moved with him, perfectly timed, like a shadow that crawled. He stopped again. It stopped. He took 2 steps backward. It followed, always right above him, always close enough to reach if there was no barrier. Daniel looked up slowly. His fear was no longer confusion. It was acceptance. This was not a question anymore. This was not imagination. This was not stress. Someone lived inside the structure of the apartment. Someone who could move quietly. Someone who could watch him without being seen. Someone who had been here long before him. And then came the reveal. He forced himself to walk to the far corner of the living room. The darkest corner. The quietest corner. The one closest to the thickest stretch of wall. He stood there. The crawling stopped directly above him. Silence. Then, a sound inches from his ear. From inside the wall. A slow, shaky inhale. Not random, not accidental. Directly beside him. Listening. Daniel stood frozen. Then the breathing inside the wall did something new. It whispered. Soft. Weak. Human. It whispered his name. Daniel. The apartment did not return to normal after the whisper. It did not apologize. It did not hide again. It changed. Something passed between Daniel and the thing inside the walls in that moment. Awareness connected them. Before Daniel suspected. Now he knew. And knowledge always invites something darker. Daniel stood there, frozen, his heart pounding so loudly that even the air felt like it shook with it. The voice inside the wall went silent after saying his name. Not because it could not speak again, because it did not need to. It had proven something important. It had been listening long enough to learn his name. It knew him. It wanted him to know that. And now the apartment felt different. Not like a haunted place. Not like a cursed place. Like a shared space. Occupied. Active. Watching. He backed away slowly, step by careful step, afraid to make sudden movement, afraid to breathe loudly, afraid to do anything that might make it respond again. He wanted to run. Every instinct begged him to leave, but fear did something worse to him. It made him curious. He wanted to know who was inside, what was inside, how long it had been there, why it chose him. Curiosity is always the beginning of descent. Daniel walked to the hallway slowly, hands shaking, breaths shallow. The hallway felt longer now, narrower, as if the walls pressed inward just slightly, like the building did not want him to move too far away, like it preferred him close. He reached the bedroom and he stopped. The bed had changed. He left the blanket folded earlier that morning. Now it was pulled down slightly, pressed inward, indented, as if someone had lain there, recently, someone his size, someone who wanted to feel what he felt when he slept. Daniel stared, his jaw clenched, his fingers curled into fists without him realizing it. This wasn't just presence. This was intrusion. This was ownership. He took a shaky breath and reached toward the blanket with trembling fingers. Before he touched it, a knock came from inside the wall beside the bed. Not random knocking. 3 slow, even taps. Deliberate, measured, communicative. He turned toward it sharply, chest tight, muscles tense. Silence again. Then gently, something dragged along the inside of the wall. Slow. Heavy, like palm against wood. Like someone pressing their hand across the barrier separating them. Like a promise. Daniel whispered through clenched teeth, "Who are you?" He expected silence. He did not get silence. He got something worse. The breathing returned. Closer than before. Deeper. Heavier. Controlled. As if whoever was inside wanted him to understand that this was no fragile thing. No weak creature. No helpless presence. It inhaled long. Then exhaled in a slow, taunting sigh. Right behind his head. He stepped back. He pressed himself against the opposite wall, chest heaving now. His fear was no longer quiet. It became physical. It took shape in shaking limbs, wet eyes, dry throat. He needed space. He needed proof. He grabbed his phone again with shaking hands and turned on the flashlight. The light spilled across the room, but it did not make anything safer. Sometimes light does not reveal safety. Sometimes it only shows how trapped you are. He approached the wall, slowly, carefully. He pressed his ear against it. Nothing. He tapped twice. Nothing responded. For 1 second, he almost convinced himself it was gone. Then a whisper came so close to his ear that he could feel breath leak through unseen cracks. "Don't." Daniel jerked away as if burned. Not a hallucination. Not his mind. A conscious voice. A warning. A command. It told him not to knock. That meant it understood boundaries. That meant it had opinions. That meant it wanted control. The threat was no longer just presence. It had personality. Daniel stumbled backward and hit the bed. He gripped the sheet for stability. His heart would not slow. His lungs dragged air desperately, trying to steady him, failing. "I'm leaving," he whispered to himself. "I'm leaving today. I'm not staying here another night. I'm done." The apartment heard him, and it did not like that. The floor beneath him vibrated lightly, barely noticeable, a tremor, a warning. Then the bedroom door swung shut, hard, slamming with violent force. Daniel jumped to his feet instantly and lunged at it. He grabbed the handle and twisted. It did not move. Locked. From the other side. He rattled it desperately, panic taking full control now. He slammed his shoulder into the wood. He yelled. He cursed. He begged. Nothing. Inside the wall. Footsteps. Slow. Walking beside the door. Following his panic. Enjoying it. Something leaned close to the frame, and the wood creaked from the pressure, the way doors creak when someone on the other side leans their weight against them. Daniel backed away. Tears welled in his eyes, but not because he was weak, because he finally understood something important. He was not fighting superstition. He was not fighting fear. He was not fighting imagination. He was inside a space controlled by something that knew the structure. Something that understood movement. Something that could lock doors. Something that could turn on lights. Something that could move objects. Something that was smarter than he wanted to believe. The door handle twisted slowly on its own. Not from his side, from the inside of the hallway. A hand he could not see controlled it. It held the handle and slowly released it. The lock clicked. The door opened gently. Smooth. Calm. Like nothing violent had just happened. Like it wanted him to understand. It allowed him to leave. He did not move. Because now he knew. He had no control here. Control belonged to whatever lived behind the walls. He felt something brush the back of his shirt from behind the wall, not breaking through. Just pressing hard enough for him to feel force through wood. It traced up his spine. Slow. Loving in the most horrifying way. Curious. Possessive. Daniel staggered out of the bedroom like someone escaping a predator that was inches away. He stumbled into the hallway, breathing harder than his lungs could handle. He looked back. The bedroom door closed slowly by itself. Quietly. Softly. Gently. Like it tucked itself back into place. Like nothing happened. Then, the silence returned. And in that silence lived the worst truth so far. It could reach anything. It could touch everything. It could make choices. It was not trapped inside the walls. Daniel was. Fear had evolved into something heavier now. It no longer fluttered in Daniel's chest like anxiety. It wrapped around him like something alive. Something that had weight. Something that refused to loosen its grip. The apartment no longer pretended to be normal. It did not bother hiding. It did not need to. Daniel knew. And once a victim knows, the game changes. The sun lowered outside. Evening crawled into the building. Shadows stretched. Corners deepened. Silence thickened. The apartment did something subtle, something psychological, Something only intelligent predators do. It stopped trying to scare him. It started trying to keep him. Daniel went to the front door. He did not run. He moved slowly because fear teaches caution. He grabbed the handle. He pulled. The door did not move. He turned the lock. It clicked normally. He pulled again. Nothing. He shook it harder, using his full strength now. Panic returned fierce and loud. The metal rattled violent. The wood frame shook. His breath broke apart in sharp gasps. The door did not open. It felt sealed, as if the building swallowed it. He hit the door with his fist. He shouted for help. No answer. He tried again. Silence. The hallway outside offered nothing. He placed his forehead against the cold surface and closed his eyes. Inside the walls beside the door, a slow dragging sound, like someone sliding their fingers downward, from eye level, all the way to the floor. The message was clear. You cannot leave. He turned slowly, back pressing against the unmovable door. The apartment felt smaller. The walls felt closer. Breathing surrounded him. A room should not breathe. This one did. He moved to the living room and stopped. His chest tightened again. Every picture frame he unpacked earlier now hung neatly on the wall. Perfectly aligned, perfectly spaced, perfectly positioned. He did not hang them. He did not measure them. He did not touch them. Someone did. Someone with patience. Someone with time. Someone who walked freely while he slept, while he panicked, while he begged. He stepped closer. One photo caught his eye. A picture of him, from 2 years ago. A photo taken in another city. A photo he had never printed. He leaned in slowly, breath shaking. That image was not copied from his phone. It was taken from outside. The shot was from a street corner. A moment he never noticed. A moment someone else remembered. Someone had followed him long before he moved here. Someone had planned this. The fear sharpened into something colder now. This was not random. This was not unlucky. This was arranged. His hands trembled harder. He touched the glass of the frame. A whisper came from the wall behind it. Soft, close, warm. Mine. He ripped his hand away as if burned. He went to the kitchen again because he needed water. His mouth felt dry. His tongue tasted like metal. His head spun. He reached for a glass. There were now 2 glasses on the counter. One clean, one used. Wet rim, condensation still fresh. He stared at it silently. Someone had been here. Someone alive. Someone physical. Someone close. The refrigerator door creaked open a little by itself. Inside, food he did not buy. Bread, meat, bottled water. Cold, fresh, recently placed. This was no ghost. This was residency. He slammed the refrigerator shut. A knock answered him, from inside the wall by the fridge. 2 slow knocks, gentle, as if comforting him, or mocking him. Night arrived, full, heavy, final. Darkness filled every corner. Daniel turned every light on, every room, every hallway. He needed brightness like oxygen. He sat on the couch, gripping his hands together, knuckles white. The building stayed quiet, a false quiet, a waiting quiet, silence that holds a grin. He stared at the hallway. Something moved in the shadows there, not a shape, a shift, like air disturbed by the motion of something large in a tight space. He blinked hard. Nothing moved now. The light flickered once. He swallowed. The light flickered again. He stood quickly. Every bulb in the apartment dimmed, slowly, as if someone twisted an invisible dial. The apartment fell into a half-darkness, a strange twilight inside closed walls. He turned, desperate, scanning the room for any source of comfort. There was none. Just him, just breathing. Not only his. The apartment breathed with him. In, out, in, out. Then it changed pace, faster, heavier, excited. Watching him panic made it happy. He walked backward toward the corner of the living room and slid down the wall until he sat on the floor. The wall behind him pulsed softly, like a heartbeat, slow, deep, alive. He pushed forward instinctively, separating his back from the surface. He could not lean anywhere. Nothing in this apartment was harmless contact anymore. He buried his face in his hands. He whispered to himself, "Think. Just think. There has to be a way. There has to be something I can do. There has to be—" Something answered him. A voice, inside the wall behind him. Calm, patient, close enough to feel. "There isn't." Daniel choked on air and scrambled forward on his hands and knees like a terrified child. He turned around slowly. He stared at the wall like it could break open any second. Silence. But it was not gone. It never left. The apartment began to change temperature. Cold, then colder, then painfully cold. His breath turned visible. Every exhale came out in fog. His hands shook violently, no longer from fear alone. The building did not want to hurt him physically. It wanted to weaken him, exhaust him, break him. Cold makes the mind foggy. Fear makes thought dissolve. Both together destroy resistance. He wrapped himself in a blanket. It did nothing. The walls groaned around him, old wood stretching, old beams shifting, old infrastructure reacting to the presence inside. He heard crawling again, above, beside, behind, everywhere, slow, calm, deliberate. He was never alone for a single second. He would never be alone again. He tried to sleep, not because he wanted to, because fear and exhaustion finally forced his body to collapse. He lay on the couch with the blanket wrapped tight, eyes closed, heart tired, his breathing slowed, his muscles loosened. He drifted. Then, the blanket tightened. Not from his body turning, not from gravity. Something pulled it, down, toward the floor, away from him. He grabbed it tighter. It pulled harder. He clung desperately, chest heaving, terror exploding again. He looked toward the edge of the couch. The blanket disappeared into the gap between the couch and the wall, dragged inside. Into darkness. Into space that should not exist. He lay there shaking now with nothing covering him. No warmth, no comfort, no peace. Just fear. The wall behind the couch vibrated gently, like someone laughing silently inside. He did not sleep. He sat. He waited. He listened. Time crawled past midnight. Every minute stretched. Every second hurt. Something new began. Whispering. Not words at first. Just sound. Breath-shaping noise. Soft. Persistent. Close. Sometimes from behind. Sometimes beside him. Sometimes from the floor, sometimes above, never predictable, never rhythmic, always intentional. When he tried to ignore it, it got louder, until finally, it formed phrases, broken, soft, human. "Stay with me. Don't go. I chose you. I need you." He covered his ears with shaking hands. It did not stop. The walls were closer to his head than his palms were. He could not block the building. Emotion broke. He stopped pretending to be strong. Tears fell freely now. Not quiet tears, hopeless tears. He sobbed in the dark, shoulders shaking, chest aching. He begged, "Please, please stop, please. I'm begging you, please stop." Silence followed, a silence so deep it hurt. Then the wall behind him spoke again. Not playful, not teasing, possessive. "Don't cry." The voice was clearer now, more confident, more real, male, human, alive. Daniel froze. He breathed hard through trembling lips. "Who are you?" he whispered. Silence. Then he heard movement inside the wall. Slow, approaching. Closer, 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 until it stopped right beside his ear. And the voice answered, soft and terrifyingly gentle. "I live here." Daniel swallowed hard. He whispered again. How long?" Silence. Long silence. Uncomfortable silence. Then, "Longer than you think." He shook his head slowly. He whispered again. "Why me?" The wall seemed to lean closer. The tone changed. warmer, more emotional, more human. Because you won't be missed. His stomach dropped. His body went numb. His throat tightened. That was not a threat. That was a fact. A studied fact. Someone had examined his life. Someone had measured his loneliness. Someone had chosen him carefully. Daniel understood his true danger now. This was not haunting. This was hunting. And it had already claimed him. Something inside Daniel finally broke in a different way. Not frantic panic. Something worse. Resignation began to creep in. He whispered weakly, "What do you want?" The voice responded without hesitation. "Company." He shook his head frantically. "No, no, no. This isn't company. This is torture. This is insanity." The walls responded quietly. "You'll get used to it." His breath staggered. His body felt heavy. Hopelessness filled him like water filling lungs. This was not chaos. This was routine. This thing had done this before. Many times. And it was patient enough to keep doing it again. The lights went out completely. Not flicker. Not dim. Gone. Black. Thick blackness swallowed everything. Daniel gasped. Total blindness. Total dependence. Total vulnerability. He stumbled through darkness, hands out, heart exploding in his chest. He touched the wall. Mistake. Something touched back. Fingers. Cold. Long. Smooth. They slid against his palm, interlaced with his fingers, held his hand. Gently. Like comfort. Like affection. Like ownership. He screamed and ripped away. The wall laughed this time. Soft. Quiet. Satisfied. He backed into the center of the room and stood shaking violently, too afraid to move, too afraid to breathe. The apartment now had everything it wanted. His mind, his body, his fear, his silence. And just when the viewer believes they have seen the worst, the building reveals something new. Daniel's breathing slowed again. He listened. He waited. He prayed for nothing to happen. That is when the whispering returned. Not from one place, not from one voice, from multiple. All around him, inside every wall, above, below, beside, surrounding him completely. Layered voices, male, female, young, old, all whispering the same words in unison. "We live here." Daniel realized the truth too late. There was not one person inside the walls. There were many. And they had been here. Far longer than anyone ever knew. The voices did not fade quickly. They hovered in the dark around Daniel like a swarm of whispering breath. Layers of quiet speech formed a living wall of sound. Not loud, not violent. Worse, soft, calm, familiar with itself. Voices that had spoken many times. Voices comfortable in their home. Their home. Not his. Daniel stood in the center of the blackened apartment, trembling. His mind tried to fight logic, tried to explain this, tried to label it. But reality was already far beyond labels. He raised his voice, though it shook. "Ha! How many of you are there?" Silence. Then, like a chosen representative, one voice separated itself from the chorus. The same male voice as before. Closer now. Gentler. "Enough." Daniel swallowed painfully. He whispered, "Why are you here?" A pause. Then the answer came. "Because we were never allowed to leave." The deeper truth begins there. Not with monsters, not with ghosts, with people, with something much worse. The apartment began to breathe differently again, not the irregular, living breathing from before. This breathing sounded trained, controlled, almost synchronized. Daniel backed into the farthest corner he could find, though corners do not protect you in a place where horror lives in flat surfaces. The voice continued, calm, storytelling, like a confession practiced over years. "They built us in." Daniel frowned through tears and fear. "What?" The wall vibrated with quiet movement. Not frantic scraping, not desperate clawing. Movement like someone shifting to sit comfortably before speaking. The voice went on. This building was not meant for tenants. Not at first. It was meant for storage. Not of things. Of people. Behind the calm narration, faint movements continued in every direction. Daniel could hear bodies adjusting position, leaning, settling, as if every wall contained someone pressed against it, listening to the telling of their shared truth. Decades ago, when the city changed, when money faded and laws became thin here, someone had an idea. A terrible, effective idea. Hide people where no one would look. Behind plaster. Inside structure. Close enough to monitor. Far enough to forget. Daniel shook his head slowly, refusing the images forming in his mind. That kind of cruelty sounded unreal. The voice corrected him silently with presence. We were not prisoners at first. We were people who had nowhere to go. People who needed somewhere to disappear. People someone wanted gone. A whisper of a woman's voice cut in softly. Runaways. Another voice, deeper. Addicts. A tired voice. Debt. Another. Unwanted. Then silence swallowed the collective for a moment, heavy with shared misery. They had once been citizens of the world above, reduced to shadows in the walls below. Daniel's heart pounded. He whispered, shaking. Then, why didn't you leave when construction finished? Why didn't you break out? Why didn't you scream? Why didn't you... A harsh sound cut him off. Laughter. Not joyful, not evil. Broken. Mad. Sad. Layered. Every voice laughing softly, quietly, bitterly. The lead voice answered, because the man who controlled this place never let us finish becoming people again. The building groaned. A memory pressed against the present. Daniel did not understand. He didn't need to yet. He would soon. Daniel backed farther into the room, instinct saying, distance equals safety. Instinct is wrong here. Distance does not exist in a house that contains people inside its bones. The voice continued, more intimate now, closer to him than before. There used to be doors. Daniel's heart froze. Doors. Into the walls. Entrances. Exits. He sealed them. A scraping sound echoed faintly above. The sound of heavy boards shifting in memory. Nails. Screws. Chains. He gave us holes to breathe, but not holes to escape. Gaps for food. Gaps for water. Enough to keep us alive. Never enough to let us go. Daniel's throat tightened. He could see it now. People sliding into narrow wall spaces. At first willingly, then reluctantly, then trapped. A prison disguised as architecture. A jail no one noticed. An entire hidden population swallowed by drywall. He whispered weakly. Who did this? Silence returned. Not empty silence. Remembering silence. Then the voice whispered, the landlord. Daniel's eyes widened. His stomach twisted in fear. Of course. The smiling man, the polite handshake, the fast paperwork, cheap rent, no questions, friendly tone, empty building, too easy. The voice inside the wall continued. He wanted tenants on paper, but bodies in the dark. He used us to scare away the wrong people. He used us to trap the right ones. He tested fear. He studied panic. He chose who stayed. Daniel's breathing sped up. He remembered the landlord smiling at him. Too warm. Too eager. Hands clasped tightly around the keys too long before releasing them. I'm sure you'll love it here, the landlord said then. Daniel finally understood the sentence. It had not been a hope. It was an instruction. The whispering shifted now. Less sorrow. More fixation. More obsession. The voices grew closer again. Not threatening tone. Possessive tone. We watched you long before you moved in. Daniel felt his blood go cold in his veins. He showed us pictures. He told us about your life. He told us you were perfect. Perfect. Because he was alone. Because no one would miss him. Because he blended into society quietly. Daniel shook his head over and over now. No. 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 You don't know me. You don't... The voices layered over him. Daniel Cole, 32 years old. Lives quietly. Nobody checks daily. Nobody sleeps beside him. Nobody asks too much. Nobody looks too long. Nobody would wonder long enough. If you disappeared. He broke. He screamed. Stop! The walls did not stop. They leaned deeper into character now. This was the deeper horror. This was not fate. This was selection. The apartment shifted again. Small, unsettling sounds filled every wall. Fingertips brushing plaster. Bodies turning. Hair sliding across fabric. Skin scraping wood. They were moving closer. Not to harm. To surround. To claim. The lead voice whispered softer now. Nearly affectionate. You thought this was about fear. It never was. Fear was only to break you. To soften you. To make you stay. A cold realization sank into Daniel's bones. They did not want him dead. They wanted him like them. Inside. Absorbed. Hidden. Lost. Owned by the building. Forgotten by the world. He ran. He did not care where. He crashed into the dark hallway. He grabbed the front door again. He screamed at it. He threw his entire body weight against it. He kicked. He punched. He sobbed. The door remained unmovable. Behind him, the walls whispered gently, "Don't hurt yourself. You'll need your strength. It will take time. You will adjust. Everyone does eventually." Daniel slid to the floor, broken. Breath coming in short bursts. Hands shaking violently. Mind unraveling. He stared into the darkness. He felt eyes on him. Hundreds, from every direction. Quiet. Watching. Waiting. Loving. In the most horrifying possible meaning of the word. Nip. He whispered the last question he should have ever asked. What happens to me? Silence stretched. Thick. Final. Then the lead voice answered. Soft. Almost tender. You join the house. Daniel shuddered. He whispered again. How? The answer came from everywhere at once. Hundreds of voices in unison. Calm, certain, complete. The same way we did. Daniel finally understood something too late. The first threat had been fear. The true threat was belonging. He would not die here. He would live here. Inside the walls. Forever. Night swallowed everything. Not darkness. Absence. The kind that feels like the world ended and forgot to tell you. Daniel stayed on the floor by the door. Knees pulled in. Hands shaking. Breath thin. Eyes wide. Hope gone. Only instinct left now. Instinct to survive something you cannot escape. The apartment watched him. Every wall. Every inch. Every hidden space filled with bodies, minds, histories, hunger. They were quiet. Too quiet. Waiting. Calm. Controlled. Like predators who have already won. The pacing changed. Faster. Sharper. Cruel. He heard the first sound. A footstep. Inside the wall beside him. Slow, deliberate. Waited. Then another. Behind him. Then above. Then to the left. Then the right. Circling. Tightening. Closing the space. He spun around desperately, searching for something to see, someone to face, anything solid to fight. Nothing. Just walls. Always walls. They moved, not physically bending, emotionally closing, shrinking the world, shrinking him, trapping not with structure, with presence. Daniel staggered to his feet. He backed into the living room. He regretted it instantly. The lights flickered back on, not bright, sick, yellow, old, wrong. They pulsed, like a heartbeat, not his heartbeat, the house's heartbeat. He stood in the center of the room like prey. His chest rose and fell too fast. He whispered, "Please, please, I don't want this. Please stop." The apartment responded with love in the most horrifying tone. "We know." Movement. Everywhere. Ceiling bulging. Walls trembling softly. paint cracking, dust drifting down like ash, finger indents appearing in the plaster from the other side. 1, 2, 3, 10, 20. Hands pressed against the inside surface all around him, human shapes trying to push through, arms, shoulders, faces almost forming, almost breaking through, almost entering the room, but never piercing. They did not need to. They could hurt without touching. They could destroy without exiting. They could devour someone emotionally and mentally while staying hidden forever. Daniel ran to the bedroom. He did not choose. His body chose. He slammed the door shut behind him. Mistake. The bedroom was the worst place now. He knew that. He still did it. Because fear makes bad choices. He locked the door again. Pointless. The lock turned by itself. Unlocked. The knob twisted slowly. Then stopped. Then twisted back. Then stopped. Then twisted again. Playful. Cruel. Patient. He backed away. He tripped onto the bed. The mattress inhaled. It felt like inhaling. Like the bed was alive. Like he had just sat on something breathing beneath the fabric. He stood instantly. He did not scream. He was past screaming. He shook, silently, broken. The whispers returned, not calm anymore. Crowded, pressing into ears, into head, into bones. Overlapping, climbing. You will be safe. You will belong. No one leaves. No one leaves. No one leaves. Voices layered until they were not voices anymore. Just sound. Sound like drowning. Sound that fills lungs and throat and mind. Daniel pressed his hands to his ears and fell to his knees. He shook his head over and over, like movement could shake the noise loose. It did not. Noise loved him now. Noise owned him. The narrator stays calm. Daniel stops being calm forever. The closet door creaked open by itself. Slow, long, painfully slow. Dark inside. Deep dark. Wrong dark. Air leaked out of it. Cold, wet, rot-scented. The air of a place that should never exist. He stared, eyes wide. Too wide. Something moved inside the dark, not seen. Felt, weight shifting, presence leaning, head tilting, watching. Waiting for him to accept reality. Waiting for him to break in the right direction. Waiting for him to surrender. He stood. He stumbled backward toward another wall. He stopped himself before he touched it. He hovered inches away. He remembered. Walls touch back. He stood there shaking like a man whose mind has already fallen apart and whose body refuses to follow, because bodies cling to life longer than sanity does. He whispered again, "I don't want this." The wall answered, "You never get to want." Fast pacing. Short sentences. No safety. No ground. The apartment flickered again. Light. Dark. Light. Dark. Each flash showed something worse. A shadow sitting on the bed. Gone. Faces pressing against the wall. Gone. Fingers reaching out of cracks that were not cracks seconds before. Gone. Something crawling along the ceiling like an insect the size of a human. Gone. None of it remained long enough to confirm. Just long enough to scar. He bolted back into the hallway. He pounded the front door again. He screamed until his throat tore. He begged until language broke. Nothing. The hallway lengthened. Walls pulsed inward. The ceiling felt lower. The world pulse matched with his panic. He stopped. He fell. He could not do this anymore. He broke completely. He cried quietly now. Not desperate crying. Empty crying. The crying of someone who understands everything is over, but their body refuses to shut down. Then it got worse. The voices stopped. Every sound stopped. Total silence. Absolute silence. Enough silence to make the air feel thick. Enough silence to make breathing loud. Enough silence to make dread scream inside his skull. Because silence means preparation. Silence means something decided. Silence means the house is done talking and ready to act. Daniel lifted his head slowly. He whispered the last weak word he would ever ask without shaking. "What now?" The house answered with a whisper too close. Everywhere. Inside him. Through him. "Now. You come home." The walls cracked. Deep. Long. Alive. Like veins tearing open. Something inside shifted forward in mass. Something real. Something physical. The building exhaled in one enormous breath and began to open. The apartment did not merely creak. It split. Hairline cracks raced across the walls like lightning. Wood screamed. Metal bent. The ceiling dropped dust in slow, heavy clouds. The floor trembled beneath Daniel's knees. The house was no longer pretending. It was opening. A low, deep groan rolled through the structure. Not a sound of collapse. A sound of release. Like something buried for years finally stretching its body. Daniel stared as the wall in front of him bulged outward. Not once. Pulse. 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 Like a chest trying to breathe through skin too tight. The plaster tore. A long horizontal split opened before him. Dark inside. Depth without light. Rotting air poured out with it. Heat of bodies pressed together. Moisture. Breath. The smell of living death. Daniel gagged. He crawled backward, heels scraping the floor desperately. The wall followed. The split widened. Hands emerged first. Dozens. Pale. Dirty. Thin. Bone and skin. They pressed out, clawing softly, fingertips stretching into the open room like flowers reaching for light. Not attacking. Reaching. Welcoming. Claiming. Faces pushed against the opening next. Not quite breaking through. Just enough to show eyes. Eyes wide and starving. Eyes wet with obsession. Eyes that had not seen real light in years. Eyes that belonged to people who should not still be alive. They saw him, every one of them. They reacted. The whisper returned, not gentle, hungry. "Daniel?" He shook his head violently. He screamed. He begged. He cried. He pressed his back against the front door. There was nowhere left to move, nowhere left to deny, nowhere safe, no ground. The wall stretched more. The crack became a mouth. A gaping, wrong mouth in the body of the building. Arms reached farther. Hands touched floor. Hands touched air. Hands touched him. Cold fingers wrapped around his ankle. Soft. Firm. Certain. He kicked. They tightened. More hands found him. Calves. Knees. Wrist. Shirt. They did not rip him. They did not tear him. They gathered him. Like something precious. Like something important. Like something chosen. He screamed again. Raw. Broken. Useless. The narrator stays calm. The house stays calm. The people inside are calm. Only Daniel breaks. They dragged him slowly. No rush. No panic. No violence. Slow. Inevitable. He clawed at the floor, nails tearing, skin ripping, blood smearing across wood, leaving streaks of red memory that would fade like all the others. He left marks. They did not matter. Nothing about him mattered except staying. The wall opened wider, enough for a body, enough for him, enough to swallow another life. He was pulled into darkness. Hands everywhere. Breath on his face. Faces inches away. Eyes inches away. Mouths whispering his name like prayer. He tried to scream again. A hand covered his mouth gently. The last thing he heard before the wall closed around him. A whisper in his ear. Grateful. Loving. Final. Welcome home. The wall sealed. Smooth. Quiet. Perfect. No sign of opening. No sign of struggle. No sign anything happened at all. Just another wall in another room. In another apartment. Waiting. Silence returned. Thick. Absolute. The kind that feels designed, placed carefully, like furniture meant to fill a room. The apartment stood still again. The cracks sealed themselves slowly, like skin healing. The wood stopped groaning. The ceiling stopped shedding dust. The floors relaxed. The air settled. If someone walked in now, they would see nothing strange. No broken walls. No claw marks. No blood. No signs of violence. Just an apartment. Quiet. Normal. Innocent. Nothing suggested a man screamed here. Nothing suggested a man begged here. Nothing suggested a man disappeared here. Daniel Cole no longer existed in the world outside. He existed inside something else, behind the smooth paint, behind the clean walls, behind the lie of safety, inside the structure, with them. He did not stop breathing. He did not die. He joined. In the darkness pressed between beams and insulation and hidden spaces, something new took shape. A new presence, adjusting, trembling, learning the rhythm of the walls the same way a newborn learns breath. He shook. He sobbed. He whispered without intending to. They surrounded him, hands holding him in place, skin against wood, bodies pressed in narrow depths, barely space to move, barely space to think. But here, movement is not needed. Thought is not needed. Only silence. The others welcomed him not with celebration, with silence. Silence meant acceptance. Silence meant belonging. Slowly their breathing synced again. A house full of lungs, a structure full of hearts, a building made of people. Outside, the city lived. Traffic, voices, laughter, arguments, normality, just beyond the walls, just out of reach. Time passed. Minutes first, then hours, then time lost meaning. One day, maybe the neighbors would smell something. Maybe someone would remember Daniel existed. Maybe someone would knock politely on his door. Maybe someone would call his name. They would get no answer. The landlord would shrug softly. People leave sometimes. People vanish sometimes. People forget to say goodbye. He would unlock the door with a gentle smile and careful hands. The apartment would greet him quietly. He would look around. Furniture calm. Walls flawless. Rooms intact. He would tilt his head slightly. Then he would smile. Because the apartment is ready again. Fresh. Empty. Hungry. Waiting. The landlord would step outside and list the room again. A simple advertisement. Quiet building. Affordable. Private. Perfect for someone alone. Someone would answer. Someone always answers. Someone always needs somewhere to disappear to. The city is full of people nobody checks on. Full of lives that slip through cracks easily. Full of names that vanish without echo. The apartment likes those. Behind the wall, in suffocating darkness, Daniel listens. He does not cry anymore. He does not fight. He breathes with the others now. He belongs to the rhythm. He belongs to the house. Sometimes he hears footsteps above him. Sometimes he hears voices outside. Sometimes he remembers sunlight. Those are the worst moments. Memory hurts more than fear. Memory reminds him there was another world. A world that forgot him. Inside the walls, someone shifts closer. A hand touches his shoulder. A voice whispers beside his ear in the darkness. Shh. Breathe. You get used to it. He does not answer. He cannot tell if he is shaking, or if the house is breathing through him now. Time continues. The building stands, quiet, old, patient. Its walls do not bleed. Its doors do not scream. It does not need to. It has learned patience, and patience keeps it fed. You could walk past it tomorrow and never know. You could stand in the hallway and never hear. You could move in and never realize. Until the breathing starts. Until the walls shift. Until the whispers say your name. The building does not need everyone. Just the right ones. Just the lonely ones. Just the unseen ones. Just the ones who do not scream loudly enough to matter. There is one question left. A simple one. A quiet one. A question the building always keeps open. Who is next? The house already knows. It always does. It is waiting. And it is very, very patient. The walls are not empty. They are only quiet.